Okay, let's see who's out there. Um, I'm still figuring out the best way to do this, but I figured we'd just hang out again. Um, if you do see the video, please subscribe to the channel and hit the alerts buttons so that I don't have to go through all this Facebook notification. You know, we can just get on YouTube, and as soon as I'm on, you can get a direct notification. So I'm going to try that anyway. Have I ever used Studio One? Hey, you guys are welcome. So we're hanging. I'm going to go in the other room here. I'm just doing some odds and ends tonight. I'll try to keep an eye on what the questions are. I'm changing out my kid in the other room, so I'm going to switch the video feed out there. I'm going to tweak a 16-inch floor tom for a minute. It's frustrating me, and then I'm swapping that whole kit out to do something else. But I might play a little bit for you so you can hear one thing I've got set up, which is a uh, coated ambassador on the bass drum with no front head. Very old school sound, but also a very familiar sound that you might recognize. Something that we're way past these days, mostly with all these boutique heads. But anyway, I'm going to jump to the other room. Studio One. What is Studio One? Is that an audio editor? Let's see. Do I have a favorite lesser-known track of Jeff's? Man, Jeff Porcaro. I mean, um, what's on? What's a? I've loved the drums on Forever Man. That's kind of a Clapton lesser-known tune that a lot of people maybe don't dig the tune. But anyway, there's a million. Yeah, I thought it was a DAW. I've never messed with it. I mean, the thing about DAWs, they almost all cover the same ground now. You know, there's not one better than the other. I've just been working with Pro Tools, and I hate it. I think DAWs are great because everybody can be in the game, everybody can be recording, but at the same time, you know, I'll get into that on another video, and I'll title it something specific so anybody that doesn't want to be bummed out can skip that one. But yeah, they're all great, man. They all do everything. They all do really, you know, nefarious things and create a sense of accomplishment when there isn't one. But again, I'll save that for that other video. But yeah, they're all good. Who else? Lesser known favorites. I don't know that one. Okay, I have to go find as a Jeff record I don't have because that's always happening. So anyway, I'm going to jump in the other room and see if I can figure out. Now, one thing, I watched a video. Eric Valentine, if you guys aren't hip, Eric is an amazing producer, ridiculous engineer, and also a drummer. And I get real set in my ways about how I tune and how I do things and overlook the obvious sometimes. And he does one thing that I picked up that my buddy Chris McHugh pointed out to me just for seating the head. And I'm fighting this 16-inch floor tom with new heads on top and bottom. I'm starting over. I'm going to walk out there and go through that and try this thing. So anyway, yeah. So Eric Valentine has got any of you guys asking about DAWs and all this stuff. He's got an awesome thing on YouTube. I think it's called Making Records with or Mixing Records with Eric Valentine. It is a tremendous resource. I mean, the guy is kind of giving you a free look into everything he does, and he's really kind of at the top of the game, you know, at this point, in my opinion. So check him out. Seems to be a lot of great stuff. Especially he does a lot of stuff. He'll show you how to do it in the box. He's also an out-of-the-box guy, but anyway. Well, okay. Best meal on the 40 Trips tour. Now that's an important question. Gosh, man, that was 2 years of that. That'd be really hard. The first one that pops into my mind is Lenny Castro and I found a Oh, you know what, man? I gotta share this thing to Facebook. That's why nobody's here. Um, See, I'm forgetting this stuff all the time. But we had a in Switzerland. I forget which which city we were in, but I do have I have it in mind. Anybody that wants to know, that's traveling the world, wants to know where some of our favorite places were. I have a big list. Anytime we went somewhere where there was a great experience, a great food, great hang, it's in my notes. So, I talk about how hard you hit in the studio versus live. Oh, you know, it's really not. It's not about that. There's no separation between what I do in the studio or what I do live. It's all based on what kind of song it is. Um, and certain things don't articulate playing them hard because you need the dynamic range to be within a certain threshold for all the notes to speak, whatever. But you know what? I need to talk about this too. Innovative percussion. You know, we've worked on a stick that is a signature stick, and I have. I don't have any with my signature on them. That's how I roll. But as far as that goes, what I was going to say, you know, it's more about articulation and making sure your interdynamic things speak in a way that's um, musically relaying what you're playing, you know. And that's where compression and things get tricky. I get bugged a little bit sometimes when, especially with a halftime shuffle, you know, or anything where you're playing ghost notes, filling in, say, the fourth, the second 16th in that def da da def da 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 da, that kind of groove, or digga digga bop, you know, that whole shuffle thing. When you compress, and there's certain mix engineers that have, it's whatever, but you can get a false articulation. So when you get a ton of compression on that open backbeat that sounds nice, what it's doing is it's elongating those ghost notes too, which are real specific about why they're supposed to be played with the velocity and the volume that they are. So that gets really weird to my ear um, when I hear things that are recorded or mixed in a way that misarticulates. Like there's a lot of times where I love all that stuff. I love hard hitting compression, and although I have gotten fatigued with it over the years, but yeah, just as far as that, talking about, you know, playing volume wise, intensity wise, live to the studio, there's no correlation. It's really about what kind of energy I'm trying to move in that song. It's always about, for me, pulling a note out of the drum. You know, there's a certain length of note I'm trying to get that's specific song to song, and especially in a live situation where I got the same drum all night. Um, you know, the note length of the drum can seem, if you go back and watch the 40 Trips DVD, you know, you can get a perception of there's different note length, and that's because of how I'm laying on it for a backbeat for a certain song, say Lion or something, versus the opener on there, which I think was Alone. You know, it's different. It's not something I'm thinking about. It's about it's just trying to make that note lay in a certain place inside that particular kind of track. Stylistically, they're different. One sits more on front. You know, one sits more back in the pocket a little bit. So it's less about you know, how hard I'm hitting, but how I'm hitting, or how long I'm staying on the drum or whatever. And it's not something that I think about. It's just something that I've always done. When guys ask me about it, I don't think of the drums a certain way. Um, as far as, it's not for me, and just my approach and what drew me to the instrument, and how I think about it. I'm always playing to the sound I'm hearing. You know, I'm playing to the sound that's coming out. It's not, what's happening is not a combination of my uh, physics of what I'm doing. All of that is answering and adjusting to how I'm wanting to sound within the context of what I'm listening to. And I'm specific about really wanting to have a really great mix live, because all that stuff is still, you know, is still something I'm doing in those settings, and I think that's why sometimes, you know, people kind of get blown back a bit by what was happening in that Toto world. You know, Ken Freeman, the front of house guy, is amazing at representing the drums out into the room a certain way. There was always so much articulation, and I know that's happening from his perspective, so I can trust that he's representing me in the room a certain way, and I can just play. So in that, you know, song to song, internal pocket or groove of one song to the next, I'm always thinking I'm listening to the band, and I'm putting myself in contact to the other instruments, basically where I want my note to ring out, and I don't want it sitting right in the middle of things, or what. There's a space that you can hit with the drums where you're constantly determining how loud you are, and it isn't about velocity. It's about where you are sitting, you know, in time relative to the rest of the band. And then when you get into something where it is a great band, like all the guys in Toto have a great time, then, you know, it doesn't change a whole lot because there becomes this group time that everybody's playing and answering to. But even within that, you know, collectively, you know, there are degrees or variations on that kind of groove, song to song. So anyway, long-winded answer. What else is on here? Quick question about snare drums. Man, oh yeah, so Pearl Sensitone Maple versus the Pearl Maple Gum Snare. Well, for one thing, I think they're fairly significantly different in price, right? The Sensitone Maple and the Gum Maple. Uh, I have them both here. I think the Maple Gum is upstairs, but actually, what's out on my kit right now, and I'll go play it for you, is the Maple Sensitone. And it's just kind of ridiculous to me how good that drum is, and for what Pearl gets to the marketplace price point wise on that stuff is really amazing. And I took issue with previous companies, and I'm not, or you know, of why drums have to cost so much, you know. And the answer I got from one major manufacturer was a lot of it was shipping from, you know, manufacturing over to the States was a big chunk of why things were so expensive. But all that being said, I think Pearl does an amazing job with some very accessible, uh, you know, pricing and high quality instruments. You know, drum kits have become exorbitantly expensive, and a lot of that goes into finishing and things like that. But the snares, they make some really great snare drums that are, I think, around $300 street. So I'm not sure what the Maple Gum snare um, goes for, you know, uh, retail, but I would say you can't go wrong with the Sensitone. What is your favorite way you tune your snare drum for the studio? Um, I am going to do, you know, so we don't get kind of caught up in all this. I'm just kind of doing some stuff around the room, and I'm going to take, you know, keep hanging here. Um, I got some tech stuff to do. You guys can see what I do. I'm going to try to fix a microphone. Have to get my soldering iron out. I'm just going to stay here for a while. First thing I am going to do is go fix that. Try to tune that 16-inch floor tom. That's something we can kind of do together. My talkback situation is not as good out there, but whatever. We're just going to hang, okay? One thing, the thing that I'm going to do that's so simple, and most of you guys probably way already doing this, but just seating the head, just put a little pressure, a little finger pressure, not, you know, just a little finger pressure in the center of the head, and pull all the tension rods to finger tight while you're doing that. And it was like, I can't believe I haven't been doing that. I mean, I can be, like I say, pretty lazy and pretty, um, you know, set in my ways about things because they work. You know, I can go round and round with certain things, come back around to my way, and the way I feel about it is a lot of times I was like, well, yeah, I was already doing that or better, so I'm not changing what I'm doing there. But this was a thing that we're going to find out if it helps because I was chasing this drum, and we'll see. Mics, what favorite mics? Gosh, you know. Somebody asked about the Toto tune "Struck by Lightning." That's a funny thing. Uh, it's a cool track. I sent David Page um, a drum 2-bar drum groove. We were talking about doing something in that vein, and I sent him that, and I still have it as a blueprint of what that song ended up being. So yeah, it's cool. I wish we could have played it live. It would have been fun. But you know, you got to figure out what the audience is wanting to hear. They come expecting to hear certain tunes. So anyway, it's a there's a lot of things that go into what makes the set list out there with different artists. So piccolo snare drums and favorite reso and batter head combinations. Um, I'm going to jump back to the microphone thing real quick. Somebody asked me. I'm not going to get specific about what um, models or brands because that doesn't matter as much as I like condensers on toms because they have better frequency response. So you need something that you can have a pad on. What I have on my drums out there right now are these microphones that I was familiar with from my childhood in my dad's studio, and they're Electro Voice CS15s, and they're hard to find, and most of the time they're broken, and I know how to fix them, and I have a bunch of them, 9 or 10. And the reason I like them is they have great proximity effect. Like a lot of microphones, as you get closer to the source, you get this 250 hertz, 300 hertz, kind of ugly, and even higher boxy sort of proximity effect. This mic, for whatever reason, the way it's vented, uh, the closer you get to the drum, you get more around 180, which starts to sit right in the fat part of your tom sound. So it just kind of naturally, by accident, work well for that. They have a really high SPL rating, so they don't fold down or distort. The low frequency response curve, it goes down to about 50, where a lot of dynamic mics start to roll off around 80. So in your 16 or 18-inch floor tom, you're losing the fundamental note a bit, especially by the time you get to an 18 by most people's tuning. So you're boosting EQ to try to get back some of that fundamental, but now you're boosting something that's not there, and it's the other thing. So that's why I like condensers on toms. Um, I switched over to a Sennheiser um, 201 on my snare drum. I don't even know how long ago now, but I haven't looked back from 57s because I always felt like 57s sounded a little nasally and narrow. And some people, you do a mod where you take the transformer out or these other things, and that does help. But I like a 201 Bayer. Sennheiser? Bayer. Yeah. Is that right? I'll let you know when I get out there. And a Bayer M88. So it must be a Bayer. That doesn't sound right. I think it's a Bayer in the bass drum. Sennheiser, I'm pretty sure, is a 201 on the snare. Large diaphragm condensers. If I have to have one thing on the overheads, I always have a Glenn Johns ribbon set of mics. Right now they're Coles 4038s, but those are expensive. You can do it with a lot of different things. If I have just one thing, I mean, typically I'll go with condensers. Um, and some of it's because the way my room works, just I kind of got lucky in building my room and solved some things about room dynamics and frequency, uh, the way to dampen certain frequencies versus others. So I don't really need to lean on ribbon mics in my room because the frequency response curve is nice and sort of pleasant in the high frequencies anyway. But I do love ribbon mics. I just don't need them as much in this room as I used to in other places. Quick question about snare drums. Let's see, somebody's asking me about a piccolo. Um, my take on that, for sure, Bayer 201. Okay, that's it. Okay, all right, thanks. Yeah, I just have to get out there and see. I get, too many options. But basically drum depth. I may have answered some of this before, but basically your pitch, the note that you can tune to on a drum, and this is remedial stuff, so apologies. But this the center pitch is based on diameter. When you go deeper on a drum, it increases the amount of low frequency that it supports. So a deeper drum, because it has more mass, is basically all it is. There's literally more mass there, so there's more vibration in the shell, which at a lower tuning keeps the shell vibrating longer, which gives more support to a lower tuning. So when you go to a piccolo, uh, you know, typically it works better with a high tuning without getting real weighty sounding at a higher note. Now, that being the way that works, then you use those equations to a desired effect. Steve Jordan, using an 8 by 14 Brady cranked as tight as you can get it, has a sound because of all that mass, involved in making that note thicker, right? And then you can go the other way and take a piccolo snare and detune it, and you can get a shorter kind of controlled note out of a drum tuned down with less mass, basically less depth. So hopefully that's informative. Now I'm going to get back to trying to tweak this floor tom. See if I, yeah, so I still have a talk back out here to some extent, but I can't see your questions, so my apologies. But yeah, so I'm going to flip this drum over. I start with the bottom head, and I'm going to detension everything down to finger tight. Try to reseat the head a little bit better per the Eric Valentine thing I was telling you about. And see how it works this time. It seemed to be a novel idea the other night, but it was on a rack tom, and there's not as much surface area to contend with the head. So I'm going to see how well it works with an unwieldy 16-inch drum that's not perfectly in round, but sounds really good. All right. It still has tension on it. It's a funny thing when you try to really, really completely detension a head. It's like, well, there's still tension on there. It's like I keep going around and it still has tension on it. It keeps coming back. And I will say this: when you're recording, you run into situations where you need to play this thing, or you're asked to play one thing or the other. And obviously, you can see what this is. Anybody that's got an eye to know what they're looking at. I'm about to switch these out to my uh, maple gum kit, and I will say this: the maple kit gum kit is unequivocally a better version of this. And these are very, I have a sentimental attachment to these, and I'm telling you, it's a better mousetrap. So sometimes to trying to do this way, you can still see like I'm going this maybe this hoop. You just have to deal. It's not an exact science. Uh, that's why I never go, well, there's one way. I mean, basically, I end up, I think, solving these things by just tweaking a bunch, and then uh, without really realizing what you're going after, I'm solving the problem. If you made a method out of it and I just went after it that way, you'd probably end up in the same result. But it's much more of a feel thing for me. And then once the drum is up and seemingly balanced, I sometimes, I'll end up with one tension rod or something it just kind of has to be wrong to sound right. So we'll see. And for another thing, with floor toms, I'm sure everybody knows this is old news, but in the absence of, like, Pearl makes these really fantastic feet. They've been doing it for a long time now. That have this one's kind of flattened out a little bit. A lot of weight on that. They act like a little shock, and allows the floor tom to resonate. If you got old vintage drums or another drum that doesn't have that kind of thing, I just have foam blocks of I cut out of packaging material or something. I have a ton of them laying around in different things depending on what I have to throw out here. If it doesn't accommodate legs that have sort of an isolation in the foot of the thing, then I grab that. So anyway, this drum right now has two of the three legs up on a foam kind of. This one's more like a styrofoam. Sometimes it's more of like a softer, but whatever you can find. All right, let's see where we ended up without. I've not thumped it or anything. Let's just see what's happening. Well, it's better so far. So let's see. So that'll just go to show you guys. You just kind of this. What am I? 40 something years of doing this, and I watch a video with Eric Valentine and kind of pick up something he's doing, and it works. Now, the other thing I like to do with floor toms, once I get them to a certain pitch, and I tend to start low and come up, man, once it's got a good balance and I'm making a good note, I go really, really small increments and listen. I mean, tiny, like 16th of a turn, even maybe, or less, and see what happens. If it creates a problem, I put it back, maybe go to the tension rod directly on the underneath on the bottom head in the same spot. So what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to go all the way around the bottom head with about an even, small, very small incremental 16th of a turn maybe. And if I feel one tension rod that has more resistance in it or less, I'll make an adjustment accordingly. I'm feeling for an even tension all the way around the drum, more so than anything else. Here's that sense of tone. That's the other thing. This is this 22-inch bass drum, 14 by 22 coated ambassador with a pillow. And the other thing is I don't, I mentioned maybe none of these videos are supposed to be like archives things. They just show up there if you want to check them out later. I'm going to do some more organized things for you guys so you can check them out. But back to what I mentioned in the last video maybe. I don't like my toms to just sit flat on a pitch. So this one, the bigger the drum, the more of that wave you can kind of get going, because there's going to be more resonance and sustain. But boom, boom, you can hear, Another little tip, I don't have it here, but this little bass drum has such little weight to it, and I don't have the spiked feet, so it's constantly sliding away from me. If you have a nice heavy sandbag, you just put it up against one leg or the other and get it to plant. Now, if any of you guys know something, I've seen some things that go under the bass drum pedal, and then it kind of sits on one leg of your, under one leg of your throne. If you guys got any solutions like that that you know about, hit me to it, because even on carpet here, I'm getting the rug here is starting to over time stretch and bend, and the drums will still kind of run away from me a little bit. So I'm still looking for the a really great solution for that. I don't like the concept of the thing I've seen of having to have the legs of your throne out in a certain spot, but there's got to be something. So somebody hit me if you know. Like I say, I kind of get set in my ways and don't go looking for stuff that often. Cool. All right, man. Thanks, Theo. Now I'm gonna go swap that kit out. Now, one thing that I could say that I do with this stuff is like all the mics and everything are gonna stay the same. Um, that's kind of what I like about having all my stuff on rims mounts. All my drums, they can slide in and out on the same hardware. Whatever it is that I have, everything I have is like on a Pearl BT10. I think that's what the part number was or is BT10. I think that's it. Um, and so I don't have to go to a bunch of, no matter what kind of drum it is, it's on that, so I can slide it right in and out of my hardware. So now I'm going to swap out and go to a totally different thing, which is that higher pitched 12, 13, 14 rack, kind of cranked up, and then these 14 by 22 inch Pearl bass drums with a front head on them. It's just pretty insane what they do. Uh, so yeah. All right. I'm also, just so you know, as I'm getting into this thing a little more, I'm gonna get a better uh, lavalier, whatever mic, uh, so we don't have this weird disconnect at times. So, if anybody following along here, I am going to tune this. I am going to do a little clinic thing here in the coming weeks. I'll keep you guys posted, and I'll do some media blast for that. Hopefully, you guys will all get wind of it before I do it. Uh, but yeah, I'm just going to tune these toms. Got uh, no tension, starting from scratch basically. So I mentioned in another video here. Uh, I'm a big fan of Gary Husband, so when I'm practicing certain things and just screwing around in my room having fun, these drums scream when they're tuned up pitched up with ambassadors. So this is a 13, tuned a little above where I normally might tune a 12. But and what you get that's exciting about the drum is all this. You really hear that overtone pronounced with the drum, which is not conducive to every style of music, but um, it's a thing, and you can really lean into them. You know. So there's a question here uh, about tuning bottom head and things like that. Go watch uh, Eric Valentine's video. Um, See if it's, I can't remember now what it's called, like drum tuning or something, but you should be able to find it. Making records with Eric Valentine or mixing records with Eric Valentine, but there's one specifically on drum tuning, and he does this two microphone recording, and he has a very interesting take on how he gets a pitch. He's kind of figured out this equation where a combination of pitch on the bottom head when the drum is dampened and you're tapping out at the edges and top head, and it gives you a certain center note, and it's pretty remarkable how the math works. I sat here and did that the other night uh, with my friend Chris McHugh, and you know, oh man, sorry, bad Tennessee allergies. But for me, the bottom head is always a bit higher than the top head. People used to always say to get pitch bend that it was the bottom head lower, but the bottom head lower makes a drum sound boxy and shitty to me. So my bottom heads are always higher, but to some degree. And then there's just a point in the balance of that where you can feel it. The way and I'm going to go into this, and I'm going to show you guys in a much more in-depth way uh, how I get there. And that balance between the two heads, whatever that balance is, the balance, the relationship between those two heads, at any pitch you tune the drum to, there's going to be a point where the interaction of those two heads at a certain interval of each other, it just makes the most fundamental sound. It's not a big guessing game. It's not. It's a matter of there it is. You'll just hear it, and it starts. The drum gets louder and ring and more resonant, and that relationship seems to be relative. Like if I pitch down, it's still kind of. But I've just never kind of measured it. Um, but there's definitely a point for me when I'm hitting the drum. I'm just tuning to the really simply to the spot where the drum makes the most uh, sound. Uh, yeah, I got to get this talk thing dialed in better than this. This is. And so the other thing I do is I kind of set when I'm changing heads. I typically start for me, whatever this rack tom is. Everything sort of answers to that, and I go in the order of biggest pain in the ass. So uh, a lot of that has to do for me with how I mount the drums and the angles that they're on, and these mounting systems is like 10 by 14 on this tom arm at this angle is kind of a pain in the ass. So I'm going to do it next so that I'm done with that. So immediately, to my ear, I can tell the bottom head is lower than the top. And that's why it's got that whack, and I immediately hated the way the drum sounded. It's close, but and so when, like I say, when I'm setting up and tuning like this is solely for a certain thing I'm going after. It's not well suited for like dense rhythm section like straight ahead, not instrumental music, pop records, whatever. Anything with a vocal and a certain instrumentation, it's not ideal to have all that. But when I'm just screwing around having fun up here, they scream. They're really super aggressive sounding. And so now we're to the 12, which in this kind of setup kind of pushes the 12 about to its choking point, especially with this mounting system. And these drums kill, but I'm afraid to say I'm going to be putting them on what the what is the rims mounts, Gauger, whatever, because I'm just tired of fighting. So we got to get something better going on with this. But these drums are ridiculous. And one thing to note that I did have to do on that 14, it's tensioned unevenly because the mount at this position, you can't see, I know it's a bad camera angle, but essentially the far side of where the drum is mounting on the tom arm, the tension rod above that is getting pressure put on it, which is choking the resonance of the shell. So I'm having to back that out to release that tension and make up for it around the drum, which is doable, but I'm not getting 100% of what the drum can do because of that. And that's why I'm giving up on that for now. I know that Pearl is working on that, and I'm sure they're going to have something that nails it, because they always do. But I'm giving up the fight on that. Sounds good already, but it's got to go up. Got to go up. I mean, listen to the rim shots, and the room is pretty killer. It just does that. But that's what's fun about playing up here like this. All right, so that's a bit of drum stuff. If any of you guys want to keep hanging, I'll keep an eye on here uh, and try to answer some questions. I'm going to try to fix a microphone here. Um, so thanks for hanging out. If you haven't subscribed, check out the um, why did that not switch? There we go. Okay. Yeah. Please subscribe to the channel and hit notifications so we can streamline this thing. And like I say, I'm gonna at some point when I figure out what I'm doing here, I'm gonna post some things that are easier for you guys to navigate, that are focused in on certain techniques. I'm also gonna do the engineering side of things, mixing side of things. I'm getting into mixing some stuff the next couple of days. So anyway, you're welcome to hang out. Did I see Monica there? Hey, Monica. It's early. What are you doing up? Are you getting off shift over there? The mics on the toms are Electro Voice CS15s. And they're kind of hard to find. They're a 70s era kind of, there's no big fuss about them. Anyway, Electro Voice CS15. And if you're trying to find some, there's several revisions and it's hard to tell the difference. Maybe I'll post a little picture or a video or something. But there's some of the drums have a little black band just below. It's like two pieces of the microphone. There's the preamp section of it, and there's a little black label around that spot on the mic, and it doesn't really do. It just says, I think it just says what model the microphone is. But having had a bunch of the microphones and going, why the heck is my first floor tom got so much more presence and low end than the other one, same microphone, same level, whatever. When I took them apart, the circuits are slightly different. There's about 4 revisions of the mic. The best one for floor toms are the ones with the little black stripe on them. The others are fine for racks. Anything down to like a 13-inch tom, but once you get into anything on the floor, when you're going for those lower notes, if you're going to look for those microphones, make sure you find the ones that have that, because they're and if you're nerdy enough to want to go after those microphones, message me on Facebook and I can point you to the capacitors that I switched out, which made a huge difference in the mics. So anyway, I got guys, there's a million things out there, but I really like those. I really like them. Also, I'm using that same microphone on the bottom side of my snare. And at some point, I'm going to mess with it on the bass drum, because when I was a kid, I remember that. And also, I just drew a blank, sorry. What was oh yeah, that mic. The CS15, if any of you guys are guitar players, they're great on guitar cabinets. They're probably fine on acoustic guitar too, kind of a little grittier than some of the higher priced microphones from that era. But they're pretty good. But yeah, they're particularly good. Any of you guys that play guitar or have guitar player friends, they're really good on electric guitar cabinets. What I'm going to be getting into next here is this microphone, which is it's a Neumann M582 body with a M71, which is a cardioid only capsule. and I use it. I have a pair of them. I haven't even used them on overheads yet. I use them on acoustic guitar. Uh, Pretty much since I put this together, I haven't recorded acoustic guitar with anything else. It's really fantastic. But I've got an issue here. There's 5 pins in here, and I got to take this thing apart and find out where I got a wiring issue in here somewhere. So I may get off here in a second because this will bore you to tears. But I'll probably get back on tomorrow if you guys, want to come hang. All right. So thanks for stopping by. Uh, like I say, I don't mean to be shameless pitching, but it's if you're interested in what I'm up to, if you subscribe and hit the alerts button, it'll just make it easier for us to be on the same page when I get on here. All right, you guys, take it easy.